Hey friends, it's Becky L. McCoy, and this is Sucker Punched. As promised, here is a second episode this week. I hope you enjoy the extra stories over this week and next week. I am talking with Rachel Scott of Better Than Blended about blending families, and she talks about what that means. And I was just really encouraged to hear some of her story and just the realities of what it's like to take two families and combine them into one, and just really hear about the challenges from Rachel's own experience. And I left our conversation feeling really encouraged, and I think you will too. And I think it'll equip us to help the blended families in our lives, whether it's parents with kids from divorce or from being widowed or adoption or whatnot. There are all types of blended families, which I hadn't really thought about that before. So here is my conversation with Rachel. I really hope that you enjoy it. I am here today with Rachel Scott of Better Than Blended. And Rachel, why don't you tell the listeners about a difficult season that you've experienced?
Wow, that's such a great question. I would say one of the most challenging season I experienced is just in learning the whole blending process, even as small as the cooking. That doesn't seem like it would be extremely challenging. But when you go from cooking for 3 people to cooking for 7 people, it's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so learning how to blend and understanding how the dynamics of my blended family looked as opposed to what I grew up in as a blended family or what other people assumed blended family should look like was probably one of the most difficult times for me.
Yeah. So explain for people who haven't heard the term blended family before. What does that mean?
So a blended family is when a family comes together, and typically the husband or the wife has at least a set of children that's being brought in from the family, or sometimes it's just from adoption. And so with the children and the two are married, sometimes it includes divorce, sometimes it includes widowed. And honestly, sometimes one of the parents has never been married before, but there's some dynamic of a child that's being involved that has another set of parents in the picture.
Okay. So you said that you grew up in a blended family, and as a parent, you're now experiencing a blended family. So what were the challenges as a kid, and what are the challenges now as an adult?
Wow. I actually love when people ask this story because it's kind of funny when they ask this question. Because what's interesting is that my husband had 3 children. My dad had 3 children. My mom had 2 children. I had 2 children, and then they had 2 together. So I literally grew up with the almost identical family dynamics as what I married into, which is kind of what drew me to changing things a little bit. Not that, it was a horrible experience, but I didn't get the opportunity to have family holidays together or birthdays together. I don't recall a time when all of my siblings were together and we were celebrating anything. It never happened. And I do remember missing those things when friends would go and be with their family, or someone that maybe had more of a traditional family would, get to have everyone together. I basically grew up with maybe 2 to 3 siblings that I was really close to. And other than that, it always was something missing. And so I feel like with those things, it really created a desire in me to want my family to look a little different. Especially when I noticed how uniquely similar we were.
What is it emotionally like to I would assume that it's probably the minority of blended families that are extremely intentional about how they bring the two families together. What was that like emotionally?
Well, I mean, I would honestly say that I think that being intentional is challenging at the beginning because you're trying to understand how to navigate, not so much with the children, but with the other parents. And so with not just the other parents, but any other outside influence, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, there's always someone else that has a different vantage point on how to raise a child or what level of involvement you should have in the child's life. And so I feel like being intentional really has to do with understanding really what your role is and how you can fulfill what you've been assigned to do in that child's life, and not always feeling like, okay, I'm coming in as a mother figure, so I'm coming in as a stepmom. That means that I do mommy things. Well, sometimes it does, but sometimes it just means that I reposition myself and I allow myself to see what are some of the needs of the child that maybe no one else sees, because they're all completely invested in the emotional needs of the child, that I get to see what maybe is being missed from the outside perspective. So I think that just really being intentional is so much, it's very challenging to do at the beginning, but it really comes with understanding your identity within the family.
I really like that, how you said that you're focusing on meeting a child's needs instead of fulfilling a role that might or might not even be healthy. Like,
right.
You know?
Exactly. I mean, because they're often really resistant to that, especially at the beginning. But they're, you know, for example, if a child doesn't get to sit down and play a lot and you sit down and you play with the child, that's a need that's being fulfilled with no title to it, with no, that's just something that they need at the time. And so fulfilling that takes a burden off of you, and it takes a burden off of the child, or the pressure off of everyone involved.
Yeah, that's really neat. What do you feel like was the most challenging aspect of blending your two families?
I would say for me was dealing with like the rejection that often happens from like the stepchild's perspective. Oftentimes there's like a loyalty piece, whether the parent is alive or whether they're not. There's always this loyalty that says, I can't fully embrace you because you are trying to fulfill a role as a mom or as a dad. And so I feel like when we do the everyday things that just says that I care about you and you're important to me, for example, getting Christmas gifts or birthday gifts or making sure that we celebrate, and then those things aren't reciprocated, the rejection is very challenging, especially for stepmoms. And so I feel like oftentimes we get frustrated and discouraged because of the rejection that is felt. And in those moments, I had to realize that it wasn't necessarily me. There wasn't anything I was doing wrong, but it was really just them learning how to navigate this new life, this new perspective, trying to figure out who I was and how I could fit in to their picture of what they were, of what all the newness that had come about with the family dynamic. So that would definitely be the main thing for me.
Yeah. And so you work full time with different families and your website and your book and your conference and all of these things. Do you find that there are a lot of similarities in like blended families that are coming from divorce situations and blended families that are coming from like widowed situations or the loss of a parent?
Yes, I definitely do. I think that the overall perspective is the idea of brokenness, whether it's from divorce, whether it's from widow, whether it's from adoption. Everyone has somehow experienced brokenness, and how they're going to create unity or wholeness is going to look different. But if we can first identify that level of brokenness, then we can start the path of what wholeness will look like for that family.
I really like that picture of going from brokenness to unity and wholeness. That's really interesting because I lost my husband 3 years ago, and I have 2 little kids, and being a broken family is usually how I describe it to people.
Right.
Because we don't really have some of the lingering issues that divorced parents have, and having to, co-parent with, but not, being part of the same family anymore, but there's still that constant broken feeling. So I really like that picture of like blending a family is the mission is to find unity and wholeness.
Right. And that's pretty much our story. I was divorced and my husband was widowed. So, coming in to 3 children that had lost their mom was the first thing that people wanted to do was make me their mom. But that was not what they wanted. And I had to learn that myself, that what they wanted was me to help fill in some spots. And once I learned that, I was the only one that could be in that season. I mean, I was the only one that can model what a wife looks like to their dad. I was the only one that could model what a mother looked like to their younger siblings. And then as I began to do that, the relationship began to grow, because it's kind of like they started trusting me. They started trusting me for who I was.
Yeah, I think so many people, I mean, whether children are involved or not, people think like you are married and you are a family after a wedding, without realizing that it takes like years and years of building a family. That I can imagine when there are children involved in developing that trust, that it just adds this whole different layer.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to take a minute to thank you for listening. It's an honor for me to help people share their stories and get to listen to these stories all the time. And I think it's really neat that I get to share them with you too. It's really an honor for me, and it's really fun to talk with you after each episode about these things. Maybe you are listening because you just really need to hear that other people have hard stuff going on in life too, that you're not the only one who's struggling. You feel like you just can't get it together. Everybody else seems to be coping with the challenges in their life, and you just can't. And I know there have been times in my own life when I feel like I look around and everybody else has it all together, and I am just like the queen of the hot mess over here. And it just helps to know that I'm not the only one, that there are other people that are having a tough time. And so I just really hope that these podcast episodes are helping you to realize that you're not alone in the struggle. If it's something that you're in the middle of a struggle right now and you just really need some encouragement, I would love to invite you to check out my blog. I've written a lot about my own experience with like grief and stress and loss, anxiety and depression, and all these different things. And I really, it's also an honor to share my own story and my own experiences there on the blog, just to encourage you that we're in this together. And maybe you don't know how to describe what you're feeling or experiencing, and I hope that maybe some of the words that I've used really resonate with you. So just head over to beckylmccoy.com, and there you'll find different articles and resources that I think will really encourage you. There's even a quiz. It's called the How Brave Are You quiz, and I think you'll be surprised by your result. You can check that out at beckylmccoy.com/quiz. Also, I'm going to be starting this really awesome, fun thing on the blog on Monday. So make sure you head over there, check it out, and sign up for the newsletter so that you don't miss a thing. All right, here's the rest of my conversation with Rachel. So during this time, that initial, when you started blending your families together, what like wonderful and good things did you see, even when it was really stressful and painful and difficult?
You know, I honestly feel like my family has a great sense of humor. And even though we are a blended family, everyone just feels like they're part of the family. So we would have times we would just come together and we would laugh about different things, or we try to be intentional with family time. And so we sit down and we would just have family time together. And in those moments, it was a constant reminder that there was a bigger picture at play with some of the challenges that we were going through. I feel like in blended families, there's always a degree of challenges that you're experiencing. You get over one, and this is with any family, honestly, like you get past one, and here comes another one, and you're like, I barely just took a breath on the last one. Yeah. But I feel like, like it's so important to have those distinct things that your family knows that grounds you. And one of the things we do is we have family day. So no matter how hectic life is, that brings us together. And in the evenings we get together and it doesn't even have to be anything large. We do something small, whether it's sitting at the table, laughing together, watching the YouTube videos, or playing the games together. We do something small, but it's a constant place that grounds us and brings us all back together from the craziness and sometimes hectic things that go on in life.
That sounds really neat. How have you decided to live bravely and authentically as a result of working intentionally to blend your families?
Well, I would definitely say that authenticity is at the core of who I am. I'm really, really bad at not being authentic about anything. It almost feels like I just have like a different level of frustration that comes with that. So I allow myself during times when I mess up with my kids to go and apologize. I'm really big on that because I know that I'm not perfect and that I want them to see me when I'm wrong, and I want them to understand how I make that right wrong. So that's definitely one thing that I constantly do is I go and apologize. I speak truth into my kids often about what's going on in life and the perspective that we have. I try to just have very open communication on their level, not an adult level communication to a child, but just really on their level, things that maybe they're questioning, that they're wondering about their blended families. Like I had a conversation recently with my 5-year-old who will be considered an ours baby. Because she started having questions. And it wasn't fair for me not to answer some of the questions when she kept seeing her siblings going with their dad. And, when they're little, they don't ask these questions. But as they get older, they want to know. And I was an ours baby, so I know the lingering questions that go on. So just really on her level, I had a conversation with her and explained a little bit of our history and explained to her where she came into the picture and how that just blossomed and bloomed into something beautiful. So just having those real conversations and seeking wisdom in how to have those conversations when the time comes.
That's really neat that you don't run away from those hard conversations or kind of try and give her what you think a little kid wants to hear.
Right. I feel like children these days are so smart, and it's a disadvantage to them not to have some answers to some of their very strategic life questions, like seeing your siblings leave for the summer and not seeing them for 6 weeks. You deserve some answers to that.
Right. Yeah.
Like I need some answers to that.
Yeah.
And so I just really feel like the more authentic that we are with our children, the more they realize that it's not the end of the world, that this is just a family dynamic that we have, and everyone has a different family dynamic, but it doesn't feel so strange when you have someone walking you through, as opposed to when you wake up one day and you're like, my life looks totally different than everyone else's.
Yeah.
Well, there's an awareness that they have in the process that allows them to feel a little bit more settled in the life that they've been given.
Do you feel like you've been prepared for those kinds of really difficult questions that they've had for you? Or are you just kind of like, oh, okay, here we are?
You know what? It's so funny is I don't feel prepared. I feel prepared for the possibility of the question. I never feel prepared for the answer.
Yeah.
The answers are always unique to the moment and the season that they are in, especially the first time my 5-year-old mentioned it, she was actually 4. And I was like, I wasn't prepared for it. So I tried to prepare myself a little bit more just in case it happened again. And then a year later, she asked again, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Come on. And I gave a little bit of a better answer, but you never walk away feeling like I gave the perfect answer. Like, you know how sometimes you'll walk away from a job interview and you feel I did great on that interview.
Nailed it.
I don't think that you feel that way when you answer these questions with the kids.
Yeah.
You just feel like it's done.
Yeah, I have to agree with you because mine are 2 and 5, so they're kind of just starting. The 2-year-old
Right.
broke down a couple weeks ago and was just like, "Mom, I don't have a dad. Why don't I have
Oh,
a dad?" And she was born after he passed away, so we don't really have
right.
pictures of them together. Like, it's like, oh,
Right.
give
And it's
mom a
like you never
minute.
walk away. You
Yeah.
don't walk away feeling great about any of the conversation, but just having those authentic, I always feel that I would rather be the person to answer those hard questions than someone
Yes,
else.
absolutely. And that they trust you enough to ask you instead
Right.
of just
Right.
kind of wondering forever.
Exactly.
Um, what would you say to encourage other families who are currently blending their families or anticipating that's coming down the road? How would you encourage them through the process?
Honestly, I would tell them that this too shall pass, that some of the challenges that are to come or that they may be in the midst of everything it has an expiration date. So it's not going to be there for forever. And that it's a constant process of building you as an individual, but also helping the structure of the home be solid, and it's built on a foundation of the love and the hope and the marriage, and to keep the marriage number one. If I can say anything else, it's definitely keep marriage number one and continue dating.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so easy, whether you have a blended family or not, to get distracted by life and
Right.
forget to make that a priority.
Right. And I feel like uniquely with blended families, there's so many other dynamics that come into
Mm-hmm.
play. And we've found out that no families are, I'm not going to say that there are no families dating, but about 85% of blended families don't date anymore. Blended family
Mm-hmm.
couples don't date anymore. But yet they're dealing with all of these challenging situations that aren't just normal level of challenging. They're emotionally draining, they're
Mm-hmm.
physically draining, and they're not even connecting together in conversation
Yeah.
as a couple. And so that's just so key is dating, going back to at least once a week, trying to date.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about your family. Before we say goodbye, I am going to surprise you with a couple fun questions. So
Okay.
we're going to test your authenticity here. So
Sounds
just
good.
whatever you think of first is the perfect answer.
Okay.
What are you loving right now?
I am loving being able to be here with my kids and homework and cooking for them without feeling extremely exhausted all the time.
That's a fair point.
Working from home is a blessing.
Yes, I feel you. I feel you. And all the mamas said amen.
Right.
What is your favorite meal, snack, or food?
I would have to say sweet potato pie. It's my favorite. Maybe because we're just coming off of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right.
And I ate too much.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Reading. I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right,
I listen to audiobooks or read.
What's the last book that you read?
Right now, actually, well, the last book that I read was the Chip and Joanna Gaines book.
Oh, the Magnolia story.
Magnolia story. Yes. Yes. And then right now I'm reading Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. It's amazing.
That is on my to read list.
Oh
How
my
is it?
goodness. Read it. It is amazing.
Okay. Well, so tell everybody a little bit of what it's about because it's really fascinating.
Yes. So it's about a devout Muslim that finds Jesus and becomes a Christian. But the story is so detailed of all the elements of his life that pretty much led him to that moment. So I'm about 2 or 3 hours in. So I'm really digging into the details of it. But it's so detailed about moments in his childhood, conversations he had with different people, and pretty much how Christ kept presenting himself to him throughout his life.
And then he went on to become like this like evangelist extraordinaire to like the Muslim world, and his story was just really incredible. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that you brought up that book. I'll link both of those books.
It's amazing.
In the show notes, and I'm really gonna make it more towards the top of my list to get that book.
Yes.
what are you doing to be brave?
I am being brave by stepping out of my comfort zone and connecting with people that I normally wouldn't connect with as a business owner. So sending out emails or just talking to people randomly that most introverts don't like to do, like me.
I hear you. Goodness. Yes. People are shocked that I'm like the most introverted person most people know.
People are shocked that I am too.
Yeah, I feel you. I like hired an assistant just to do my phone calls and emails so that I didn't have to talk to people.
That's how I am. Like, that would be wonderful for me. But I know I call myself an introverted extrovert because I can be extroverted if someone comes like into my space.
Yep.
But I can't just like be in a room with people and start a conversation.
Yes. And then I need like a day and a half to like by myself to recover from it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel you. And all the introverts listening are like letting out a giant sigh of relief. Like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Exactly. No, you are not.
No, for sure. And extroverts, I don't understand you. I am raising an extrovert, and it is so challenging.
Yes.
I don't know where he came from, because my husband was so introverted, too. And, like, then there's this little boy who's just so extroverted that I cannot keep on top of him.
Don't you love that?
Yeah. Whew, and the stretching continues.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, Rachel, for coming on and sharing your story. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and a little bit about Better Than Blended, so that if anybody is interested in getting to know more, they can learn more.
Awesome. So you can find us on betterthanblended.com or through our Facebook page or our Instagram page are the two main social media platforms we use. So our goal is to provide resources, support, and community to blended families. So we have resources for couples, for people going through custody and court battles, and we're constantly creating new resources. And then we have a Better Than Blended Facebook closed group for couples.
And then I saw you in October, you're having a conference.
Yes. So in October of 2018, we will have our first Better Than Blended Couples Conference. So we're definitely looking forward to that.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yes.
So cool. Well, thank you. And I will put all your contact information in the show notes so everybody can find you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
I just love that conversation and the work that Rachel and her husband are doing to encourage blended families, that they're starting this conference. They have so many resources over on their website. So definitely check that out. It's definitely a resource that I'm going to be continuing to share, just because I think it's so necessary, and both for the families who are doing the hard work of blending, but also for the people who are supporting and encouraging those families, for their community to kind of hear some stories and understand what the work of blending a family is really like. You can find me anywhere on social media at Becky L. McCoy. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and my website /blog is beckylmccoy.com. I look forward to hearing from you. If you are a blended family, check out Rachel's website, betterthanblended.com. And I will talk to you next week with the last 2 episodes of Sucker Punch Season 2. Have a great weekend. And if you're on my email list, check your inbox on Monday, because I'm starting something really awesome and fun, and I can't wait to share it with you.